Hi sweeties, my name is Fares and welcome to my art channel. It's the first time you can hear my voice, right? I'll be honest, it was very difficult for me at first trying to make a video using my voice, but I also really want to talk about some topics, bring into my channel and share to you some informations and everything else that can make you feel interested in speaking of movies. So let's start with Beauty and the Beast from 2017. I was very excited when I came to know that Disney was going to remake the animated classics and how they were going to be adapted as a live action. I think the first Disney live action I watched was Alice in Wonderland, which I really appreciated because it was very different from the animated version. Then I saw the live action of Beauty and the Beast. At that time I had no knowledge of how movies worked behind the scenes. I didn't know how film scripts worked. I watched this movie and I loved it at first. But then, years passed and I noticed that Disney was releasing other remakes, which I was feeling okay with it. I discovered that some Italian YouTubers would talk about Disney and other animated movies. It's thanks to them if I got in love with movie scripts and the importance of the characters and their story. Speaking of Beauty and the Beast, I reached an Italian girl named Flame88 Tongue and I could notice that she made many videos speaking of Beauty and the Beast. But these videos were speaking of this remake as a bad thing. She was telling every mistake Disney did with doing this remake that makes it unwatchable. At first, I felt like, is this movie hated really that much? I couldn't understand the reasons behind it, but I felt very happy to meet this girl and that she finally made me understand what was seriously wrong with this movie. Beauty and the Beast is a tale that comes from the myth of Eros and Psyche. Psyche was such a beautiful girl that made Aphrodite jealous, and also because every suitor were always around Psyche and not giving too much attention to Aphrodite herself as the goddess of love and beauty. Eros, son of Aphrodite, fell in love with Psyche, but since he was afraid of his mother's wrath, he took Psyche into his magic castle and meeting her only every night. Since Aphrodite was jealous of Psyche, decided to make a magic spell, which Psyche would become the bride of a monster. Since Psyche can only meet Eros at night, she thinks that he's a beast. They spend every night together and slowly Psyche falls in love with him at the point that she wants to see his face. Eros refuses and Psyche will just get along with it. One day, Psyche will be instigated to see the true face of the beast at nighttime. Eros, feeling betrayed, escapes from Psyche and leaving her all alone. Psyche goes to pray to Aphrodite and wants to apologize to Eros, but Aphrodite decides to give her some tests to pass and she will be forgiven. She passes them all, but in the last one she dies for being careless. Eros goes to save her and both of them will get an happy ending. These tests were done to make Psyche accept her own carnal nature and because she is Psyche. Psyche is the representation of intellect, spirituality, and joining with Eros, she discovered her sensual desire. This myth was used by many authors to write their own Beauty and the Beast story. Beaumont's version is the one more recent and more closer to the 1991 animated classic. So this is more like a summary of where Beauty and the Beast comes from. Now I'll start to talk about the problems of the remaked one. First, style choice. If Disney is going to get a remake of an animated classic, there should be some steps they have to follow, like the stylistic choice of the movie. In this case, the choice of setting, costumes, time period, makeup, and tints. Bill Condon chose Rococo, and at the time period is set on 1700. Same time Villeneuve, another author who wrote another version of Beauty and the Beast. There is a problem with this stylistic choice though. Nobility at that time used to wear big wigs and wear extreme clothing and less elegant. It was common that ladies were found out living in those wigs, so yeah, not the best choice. It could be okay if this choice could have talked about the appearances problems, but this is not the case, since at this point in time we don't think about anything of this clothing. Are these people living in the castle good people? No, They seem to act like bad ones and very egoistical, not caring at all about peasants. A big problem with this movie is that everything is showing up is exactly what it seems, even though the animated classic lessons was that it doesn't matter your appearance. In this case, the live action isn't the same from the animated version. Bad people are bad people, good people are good people. I'm always speaking of physical appearances right here. Disney animators took in consideration to animate Beauty and the Beast with Rococo style, but they decided to reject it, and they did a very well choice. I'll also give you some examples. Gaston looks awesome, he's very muscular, with a masculine voice, and could be a good person. Once you look at him more closely, you discover he's a dumb man, and that you want to punch him so hard for acting like this. Vice versa for the Beast. His entrance looks like he came from an horror movie. Everyone looks terrified of his presence, and we can think he could be evil because of his appearances. Once we look at him closely, we can see that he's the most sweetest person on earth. Think about the three blondes as well. They look cute and all, but they are stupid for falling in love with a dumb man like Gaston, only because he looks awesome. And that's it. The three girls from the live action are wearing the same ugly outfit. They even result much more vulgar than the ones from the animated classic, even if they were wearing low-necked clothes. And these three girls from the live action looks exactly how they look like. They don't look girly at all. Maurice from the animated version looked like a crazy eccentric man, but he was a kind father and an intelligent inventor. The one from the live action is exactly what it seems, a balanced person with nothing bizarre. The only two characters in the animated that were being very representative of being exactly what they looked like were Belle as a beautiful girl and LeFou, since he looked stupid in and out. Speaking of architecture, there is a scene where Cogsworth says how much the castle architecture changed through the years for the past kings, and that we can see some Rococo, Neoclassicism, Baroque, and Romanticism. This looks perfect to the eyes of the viewer because it also matches with the style of some decorations that we can see through the castle, a return to spirituality that was almost lost during Illuminism period, and adding some magical practices. This mixes very well with dualism of Eros and Psyche myth. This wasn't a lazy decision made by Disney to understand how to show up this movie, artistically speaking, and how to connect it with Eros and Psyche. You can also notice some artistic values through the scene of the Beast's transformations. As you can see, his detailed hand turning back to normal and his appearance looking like a Michelangelo statue, because in this case the prince looks beautiful outside, but we have to consider much more his beauty within. The washing machine invention. This one is a problem. I mean, it's not like I hate that women have to build things that men can do or something like that. But this is a problem because Belle is taking his father's ability to build inventions. This movie doesn't show it that much. I'll explain better. Belle builds a washing machine, meanwhile Maurice builds a music box. Why? What is the meaning of it if it doesn't bring you anything in return? The invention Maurice did in the animated one at least helped both of them escape from the basement. It was considered brilliant since this machine was used to match brute force and human ingenuity. This dichotomy of Eros and Psyche was so much considered in the animated classic, as you can see. In the live action, Belle uses a tweezers to help both of them escape only for building Maurice and Belle's relationship. It's cute, but it's not the fulcrum. Also, why wouldn't you bring that washing machine with you instead of that music box? You know already that your daughter is intelligent like you, right? And one other thing about the washing machine thing. Another problem is the contest that was made around it. The school teacher approaches Belle and tells her that it's a problem to make other girl children read. Also, where Belle took that children book from? Was expecting other girls to reach her and to read them something? Anyway, we'll never know. Seriously, a teacher is causing a fuss with a girl learning to another one how to read, and not for the washing machine invention, and Belle neither tries to justify herself for this. Also, there is a school right there. Seriously, there isn't anyone who will reach her age and doesn't love reading like her? You're seriously telling me that no one besides Belle loves reading? In the animated version there is a library, but this one is maintained by an old man, and probably these books were read by old people, and it's surprising for him to see a young girl like Belle liking so much reading. All children played, worked, and started so young, and it was so normal back then, especially in villages like this. It was justified that none of them loved reading besides Belle. Belle in this case could read because his father was an inventor. They don't have any economic problems, and both of them are intelligent. The live action shows up like 5 books. Is this even called a library? Anyway, it wasn't correct for the teacher to act outraged for Belle reading to another girl in 1700, since people with wealthy families could read and write in books. Villeneuve was a woman born in that time period, so it's true that in the animated classic Gaston complained about the girls reading, but would you trust a man that wants to take you on bed? Also, many Disney villains want to make the protagonist feel thoughtful. In the animated version, people don't care that much that Belle reads. Also, girl, how did you not fall in love with the man that was holding the little library? I know he's a priest, but this doesn't mean that they have to share a carnal love, of course. There is also platonic love in the world, and Belle is the representative of Psyche after all. I know Disney wouldn't do that. But why put in a young character who respects Belle, loves reading, etc.? Wasn't Belle feeling alone and isolated after all? Direction. Some camera movements and static ones are very tiring to look at some points. Meanwhile, many camera movements from the animated version doesn't look unpleasant. The viewer can see everything with a relaxed expression and understand everything that is happening and notice details. It's very important, speaking of colors choices for the characters, clothing, etc. The animated version had Belle wearing blue colors like the sky, and this means spiritual elevation. The red color Gaston wears that represents love, passion, anger. It's also important to let us viewers see a character entrance. Gaston shoots to a bird meanwhile he's waiting under the shadows, holding a weapon. This means that he's a sinister character that we can trust at first. He also manipulates LeFou a lot, like a puppet. And the fact that he points his weapon to Belle, saying that she's going to be his next prey. He doesn't consider herself as a person, but an object, a prize. In the live-action version, he's holding a spyglass, but this doesn't say anything at all to his sinister character. This looks like a more family-friendly entrance. Gaston also seems like he feels insecure of himself while he's speaking to a mirror. He acts like an awkward man, more than acting like a strong one who doesn't care at all about the others than himself. You can notice that it works in the animated version, when he always watches himself in the mirrors. The scene in which Maurice falls from the horse in the live action is done very bad. I couldn't understand anything. I'd advise you to rewatch it again in slow motion. These are directions problems, not scripts. It's very important to use camera to see character emotions, especially if they are exploring something new. We cannot see Maurice's expressions, but instead we see mostly the environment of the castle. This is very wrong to do. Yes, it's important to see the environment of a new setting, but never forget to show what the characters are feeling in that moment. The viewers are following the character. Maurice's reactions will become ours. It's important for character development, but also for viewer involvement. Maurice from the animated version had attention almost in every scene, and we could see the environment at the same time. We could also explore what he was feeling. In the live action, we can never see what he's feeling while he's exploring the castle. Another stupid thing that happens. Once that sheep shows up to Maurice, he escapes from terror, goes along with Philippe, and he stops him, because he has to reach a rose that Belle asked for. Why would you even stop for a rose if some object started to animate itself to speak to you? You could have picked up a rose while you were running and feeling scared. No, they just stop and call me, take a rose, meanwhile the castle will animate itself and try to eat us like the movie Monster House. I'll tell you why this happens. Maurice that picks up a rose is a reference to one of the versions of this tale, which Maurice was a rich man with 3 daughters and 3 sons. One day, they just fell into disgrace and becoming poor. Maurice tries to become rich again, and every child of his asks him something to bring them about. They'll just ask for a rose, and once he gets lost he finds the Beast Castle. He hits there without any problem and then picks up a rose from Beast Garden. The Beast gets furious for not respecting his hospitality and decides to let him bring in the castle the most beautiful daughter of his in exchange of the rose. The rose symbolizes sex consent from the Beast. You have to take this as a metaphor. Fathers of children girls always feel protective over them and never want them to fall in love with another one. Obviously, they have to let go their own children to live their own life. In this case, the rose is the metaphor to sex consent with his most precious girl. This contest works in that version, but not this one, since it felt too stupid and unrealistic behavior from Maurice to make this happen. I'll continue to talk about these tips in my next speed paint videos, since it's taking me too long to finish everything that I searched about the problems of the remake of Beauty and the Beast from Disney. Bye bye sweeties, see you next time!